Hello, it is me. I am back with another ramble. So, here's what we're going to be talking about. Specifically, I see a lot of kind of like trends happening in the EV industry and within the shipping industry, and I would like to discuss them. And so, this is going to be pretty fast paced. I am pretty exhausted. My car is fucked, and I got no sleep, and I really want to go get coffee with my friend after this. So, we're gonna kind of zoom, but basically, like, the overview is how car carriers have changed over the years, specifically in the marine shipping industry, chemicals and marine firefighting, and how that kind of ties into everything. Obviously, how EVs work, what about them like changes the way that we do firefighting, and all this other stuff. Also, the death of ice vehicles and how that also kind of contributes to the problem. Our America Used Car to Africa pipeline, EV fire issues, recent car carrying fires, and then what I think it spells out for the EV industry. As you can see, I have my intern. He is quite shy, so just let him hang out. But also, from my last video, I'm starting to make version notes. So I'm like watching it back and I'm giving myself feedback, and I still want to have the same format of like, I just kind of ramble, but I don't want it to be awful to watch. So this time I'm going to try to speak slower and kind of take more pauses. I've added more memes, more photos, a little bit more research, and some more emojis because I just want to make it more like visually appealing. Also, and I do want to say, I have no credentials in this industry. You have no reason to take what I say besides the fact that I have autism and I love boats and I love technology. So use this information at your own risk, right? So I also wanted to quickly discuss like this YouTuber who's been super influential in my thoughts on the topic. They are What Is Going On with Shipping. It's someone who's been a firefighter and a mariner for a really long time, and they make a lot of really interesting videos on this kind of thing. And I did just want to kick off with a meme. That's about it. So let's talk about some of the issues that occur when you're trying to firefight on a car carrier, right? So you're probably going to see these in the photos, but there's like no space in these boats. They're super enclosed areas, and the heat of the fires can burn really hot, even without EVs, right? So recently, we just had a fire that killed two firefighters on a cargo ship in New Jersey. And this particular ship was actually carrying ice vehicles to Africa. And I don't know this for sure, but some of the reasons why the firefighters died is because there was just so much smoke in such an enclosed space. And when you're a firefighter, you really only have your hose. That is basically like, it's your defense, it's how you get back to where you're coming from. And because of the way that like car carrier ships are set up, it's very hard to do firefighting in these environments. So this is what a car carrier ship looks like. As you can see, it's basically a steel box. There's not really any windows. Um, you can also see it from like another angle, and of course I added the pertinent comment, "This motherfucker has no windows," and then you can kind of see what I mean by like, it's just so hard to firefight in this space, right? Like, imagine you're trying to go through that and it's smoky and you have a hose and you're trying not to get caught like in all of these little cable ties and you're trying to move through, and it's just like such a clusterfuck. So this is the Felicity Ace. It was a car carrier that was carrying about 4,000 luxury cars. Allegedly, and I don't think this has been confirmed, it caught on fire because of an electric Porsche, and it basically sunk to the bottom of the ocean. Here's another meme, because I just thought it's just like, when am I ever going to have a chance to use that meme again? Probably not. So now that we've talked a little bit about the challenges of what does it actually mean to try to fight a fire on a car carrier, let's talk about EVs and how they're kind of changing the whole game. So first and foremost, EVs don't need oxygen to catch fire necessarily. They need to fully burn out, and they burn at a higher temperature. So a lot of the chemicals that you would usually put on a car fire to remove the oxygen to remove the fire just don't work on EVs, right? They also take a fucketh ton of resources, and I thought this fish meme was very funny because that's what most EVs look like on fire. So for reference, this is from a local news article where they said a normal car fire uses 500 gallons, but taking out a Tesla fire took 12,000 gallons of water, and that even if it extinguished, it would just reignite. So if this is just like one car, imagine an EV car catching on fire in a steel box in the middle of the ocean. Like, it's just crazy. So the reason why I bring up chemicals and the reason why we're discussing the changes in EVs and in how they can be fought is because halon used to be a primary chemical used in marine firefighting. It's still prevalent in the aviation industry, and it's basically a chemical that stops the fire chain, right? So you need oxygen, you need fuel, and you need ignition. And so halon basically cuts oxygen, I believe. Don't hold me to that. So they used it. It's still used in the aviation industry. Regulations shifted around how car carriers needed to be built and how many bulkheads there were. And it's also worth noting that halon basically was like put on a ban list. And they were like, okay, this shit is like creating holes in the ozone layer. Like, we can't use it anymore. So after regulation changed how car carriers were made because of halon, they were like, JK, reverse. And it's a pretty big thing, right? So there was this kind of fix, now there no longer is, and now that fix especially isn't relevant to EVs. This is a little bit more about halon. You can pause it. It's like more of an in-depth description, but I'm just going to keep chugging. And the reason why halon is used in a lot of aviation environments and in a lot of marine environments is because it doesn't damage anything, right? So if you have a plane or if you have a car that's catching on fire, you really want to minimally damage it as much as possible so that you have the best chance of recovering anything. So halon is used in a lot of aviation aircrafts. It was used especially in a lot of marine environments. It was safe to use in enclosed spaces. It didn't really hurt humans, and it was not really toxic, but as we know now, holes in the ozone layer, so can't win them all. So this is a good example of like firefighting, halon. As you can see, there is a halon fire extinguisher still on the market. You do have to like special order it, and it is $1,000 for a 20-pound fire extinguisher. So there's all that. So, okay, I mentioned the Felicity Ace. I mentioned it was a 4,000 car incident. And so basically, allegedly, this thing caught on fire because of an AV. They basically just had it burn and then it sunk to the bottom of the ocean. They still don't necessarily know what caused it, but it caused a car carrier to basically ban used EVs and shipping them entirely. And it also cost them a $500 million loss for that ship alone. So this is kind of getting into what I'm imagining in our current EV industry and with a lot of the trends going on in the auto market is because America is having a really strong push to EVs, there's more EVs being shipped out, or there's more EVs being shipped into America and more ICE cars being shipped out. So my car got towed. That's not true. I'm right here. Okay, aside from the point. But the gist of it is like we don't really have a great way of responding to EV fires on carriers. And we're still trying to figure it out like on the road. We're still like basically shutting down the whole road so that these Teslas or so that these like BMW i3s can basically burn to the ground. So there's really not a good solution here, right? And so on the opposite side, there is a lot of ICE vehicles, so internal combustion engine vehicles, that are being driven in America. They're scrapped for one reason or another, and then they're being put on car carriers to be sent to India, Mexico, Africa, to basically like continue the kind of cycle of selling, right? So the issue with exporting more ICE vehicles is like just because ICE vehicles are on a car carrier doesn't mean that it's safer, right? So we noticed with that fire up in New Jersey, that was a car carrier that was just all used vehicles. There was no ICE, or there was no EVs on it, and still it killed 2 people because it's just dangerous. It's not simple to fight a fire on a car carrier for any reason, right? But especially with used cars, they have little to no consistency about what's in them. So, like, if someone just leaves a chunk of firewood in the back, I don't think they would, but that's something that could happen. They have like hidden car issues and maybe electrical issues, or maybe like they have a fuel tank leak. Like, there's so many different things that can go wrong with used cars that don't necessarily go wrong with brand new cars. And then also there's like variable amounts of gas in the fuel tank, right? That being said, like a lot of these car carriers are shady. They are the kind of people who are like registering the boats in Panama so that they don't have to pay labor laws, and they're like cutting all of the regulations as much as they can. And so they're really trying to ship these ICE cars for as little money as possible, right? So what I'm basically seeing high level is like, because there's more push for people to go to EVs, more EVs coming in, more ICE cars going out. Both of these are issues in their own way. So as demand for EVs will continue to grow, we really don't necessarily know how to solve the shipping issue, which I think is more my big like takeaway overview of the video, right? So this is another little tidbit about the Felicity something vehicle carrying ship. Oh, actually JK, that's another ship because they just all catch on fire. But long story short, the issue is we don't really know the frequency of EV fires compared to ICE fires, just in general, like driving cars on the road, but especially in these like car carrier shipping environments. And we don't really have a great solution at sea, and there have been some crew members on ships who have died because, as you saw, there's just sealed boxes. There's like no window close to the sea where they can jump, so they're usually people are like jumping into the ocean from these very tall platforms, and it's usually fatal. So there's that issue. And then also a lot of times the best solution is just to let the fire burn, which very high loss, not great for the environment, especially because EV batteries leak chemicals into the water. So it may have a knock-on effect on our oceans, depending on how many EV fires there are, depending on like the chemical makeups of the specific cars catching on fire. But that's something where I'm like, oh, I think that's a problem, right? And then also, as we mentioned, the amount of water that it takes to put out these EV fires is just like exponentially more than it is to put out a regular car fire, right? So if you're imagining like a ship full of EVs catching on fire versus like a ship full of ICE vehicles catching on fire, there is a magnitude in difference in difficulty, in cost, in the amount of loss, potentially in the amount of loss of human life, and all of these other things, right? And so one of the things that I'm like looking at this and that it's making me think about is like, as we continue to transition to a clean energy future, there's going to be so many little like tidbits and little things where we thought it was all cool and now we basically need to revamp it or relook at it, right? Considering kind of like, oh, we solved the issue of firefighting on car carriers with halon. Well, you didn't. You made holes in the ozone layer, and now it's not even like a relevant solution, right? So I think there's going to be a large number of companies who do pop up to solve these like kind of smaller issues that are going to be affecting us at a bigger scale as we transition that. And then those are my thoughts. I'm just really interested in this. I think it's a really big problem. I think it's going to be a huge issue with EVs, and I think it might actually bump up the price of EVs and slow down the adoption of EVs, which is why I wanted to bring it up and I wanted to discuss it. And so these are my favorite memes of the week. The how to properly hit a bong one, that just killed me. I'm sorry. Also, I'm going to try to move my mouse cursor to not be in front of the PowerPoint. I've noticed that. I know it's probably annoying. Only 5 of you are watching, and 3 of them are me. So sorry to myself. But yeah, these are my favorite memes of the week. And then also, Richard Seiken, my favorite poet of all time, is coming back with a new book. And I would advise you all, if you're into queer literature, to pre-order that book or to look into Richard Seiken and to just like appreciate him. So he is back on Twitter promoting his book, and he's just sharing these like little Twitter gems, and they make my day. And so one of the things that I'm interested about, kind of like looking at this video and looking at this problem, is like, who is going to be responsible for fixing the unexpected issues of green tech. So in some forums, I saw people being like, well, you know, car manufacturers just have to create like a better method of containment around the batteries. And then other people were like, well, it should actually be on the shipping companies to make sure like the boats don't catch on fire. And so there's so many different angles of this is a problem, who's responsible for it, but I'm just interested in like if there's people who have thoughts, what those thoughts are. Because I mean, I don't know, I think it's a very complex issue, but I think it's enough of a threat to the point where I'm willing to say like this could, at least in my opinion, majorly affect EV adoption, which is not something that I want to happen. So that is the end of it today. I'm gonna go get coffee with my friend. I'm gonna enjoy my day. I'm gonna not think about my car's transmission needing to be replaced, and I am gonna think about how do we fight fires in steel boxes with like these like super flammable cars like in the ocean. I don't know. I think it's an interesting thing, but just keep on thinking about it. But be safe. Talk to you guys later. Bye.